What's up guys, Lifting here. In this video we're going to go through an Alching session. And this means that I'll be using my alchemy orbs on white pieces of jewelry, so rings, belts and amulets. The intention is of course to roll some valuable affixes and some good rollers of these affixes, and then it is my goal to try to explain to you guys what is considered valuable. And then as we do these, I have sorted my stash so that we will be categorizing them into 1 to C Chaos Orb for the price 47, 8 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 25, 1x, and 2 to 5x plus. And that's how we're gonna categorize these items. And now we will be doing this on the fly, so the prices can't be that precise and there will probably be a few mistakes, but hopefully this will still serve to give you guys an indication of when an item is considered valuable in many situations. And keep in mind guys that I don't play in Standard League, I don't play in the regular Hardcore League, I only play in the Hardcore Challenge Leagues and, Challenge Leagues. So the prices I'm going to give you examples of here reflects my knowledge in those leagues. And so if you play in Standard League, you may have a very different approach to how you will price items. So you may ask why use these alchemy orbs on these. Again, the intention is to of course get a good item, but the other thing is also that any or all of these items here are above item level 60. And that means that if we get a bad roll on this ring for instance, we can simply use it in our Chaos Orb recipe. So every time I play I have these 4 tabs here, my Chaos Jewelry, Chaos Weapons, Chaos Helmet and Chest, and Chaos Boots and Gloves. And anytime I find anything I don't need, any rare item that I don't need, I'm gonna put it in here, and then when I have a full set of each, I'm gonna sell that to the vendor to get a Chaos Orb. With this method we'll be getting a lot of jewelry we can then use for Chaos Orb recipe, so only half of the value is lost if the item is worth less than a Chaos Orb. So it's pretty cool. But I think we should just get into it. So as you can see, I'm going to use my Orbs of Alchemy now on these items and we will head into the process. And there we go. And I should probably explain before we begin. It is not random which type of base items I have chosen for this Alching session. As you can see, I have a lot of 2-stone rings, I have some unset rings, I have a diamond ring, and I pretty much only have leather belts. I also have turquoise amulets, agate amulets, and onyx amulets. And oh, I do have a coral ring over here. And now the important thing here is that some of these base items are better than other base type of items. For instance, you don't want an iron ring, for instance. The implicit 1 to 4 damage that it deals is simply not worth it. It doesn't scale well late into the game, and so on and so on. The 2-stone ring with its dual resistance is pretty much always usable. Anyone can always try to improve his or her resistances, as that will give you more room to build on your damage on other items or life or whatever. So 2-stone rings are good, diamond rings are good if you're going for a crit based build. Unset rings can be good because there is a niche market for them, and that is summoners. Especially if you get unset rings with dexterity on them, but I'll explain that as we go and if we find one of them. Coal rings are okay, life is always okay, but it's not as valuable as the 2-stone rings in my opinion. Leather belts is because they add life and they add a pretty good amount of life, and that is usually better than the string belts that adds physical damage or the heavy belts that add strength. However, these 2 belts are the second and third most valuable, at least from my experience. So if it's not leather belts, go for heavy belts for the strength or the string belts for the physical damage. And then you also have the turquoise, I can't pronounce that, I know. And you have the power amulets and you have the agate amulets. And now I don't have all of the hybrid amulets here, but basically the reason these are valuable is because they add stats or attributes, and that is good because attributes will allow you to level up gems, it will allow you to wear certain types of gear that have a certain requirement. And yeah, that's basically how it is. So let's look at the items that we have managed to craft so far, and we'll see if anything is valuable and which category we will put them into here. And so the first item we have here is an onset ring, and the thing that makes this onset somewhat valuable and will give it a spot over here in the 1 to 3 C is that there will be summoners who explicitly look for the dexterity to be able to level up their gems. They'll be looking for a green socket for the desecrate or their flesh offering gem, and they'll probably be looking for some resistances as well. However, they can't really use the increased fire damage, and they can't really use the 8 to 18 cold damage to attacks. And because of that, it's really not valuable. You can craft some life on it, but most likely this will be for a summoner who's leveling up, who just wants to use this gem until he can use something else. So I'll be putting it in the 1 to 3 chaos section here. The next item we have here is a pretty decent 2-stone ring. It has the maximum implicit rolls. Remember, a 2-stone ring can roll from 12 to 16 to 2 different elemental resistances. It has a tier 4, I believe, life roll, a tier 3 or 4 energy shield roll, and then it has a decent fire resistance roll and a pretty shitty lightning resistance roll. But the important thing is here that this ring has all the right affixes that makes up for a good defense. This ring is excellent if you are a hybrid caster, or even if you're just like a life-based character, because the energy shield is always a nice additional bonus, even though it's not yet that useful. It even has room for an additional prefix and an additional suffix, so that means you can even craft more resistances on this. And because of this, depending on the time in the league, this ring is actually quite useful and quite good. So I'm gonna place this in the 4 to 7 chaos orbs, where this is most likely, depending on the time in the league, a 7 chaos orb. If it had the extra resistance, it would definitely be in the 8 to 10, but a pretty sweet ring. The next one is not so attractive. It has 2 to all attributes, which is a very low roll, not really that useful. The implicit roll is 14, which is decent. It has 2.2 life regenerated per second, which is absolutely terrible. Life regen is usually not something you want to have on your gear, because life regen doesn't scale well into the game. And then it has an energy shield roll, but it's not really useful. The affixes doesn't really work too well here. So we're gonna put that in the chaos jewelry here, and then we can use it for the chaos orb recipe. Next one has 13 to fire and cold implicit. It has some dexterity. Again, attributes can always be useful. It has life, a decent life roll, tier 4 life roll, I believe. Or is it tier 5? It doesn't matter. And then it has mana, increased mana regeneration rate. Now, mana regeneration rate used to be somewhat more valuable, but with the current meta in 2.0, it's not as valuable as it used to be, at least not from my experience. But the ring still provides, some type of resistance. It helps cover those needs while you're leveling. It provides you with some attributes that helps you level up your gems or allows you to equip some gear, and it has open for 2 prefixes more, so you can actually craft some other stats onto it as well. So it's an okay ring, but it doesn't really deserve more than 1 to 3 chaos. Alright, the next item has a very nice strength roll. This is a tier 2 strength roll. It has a shitty intelligence roll. It gives us increased fire damage and adds 7 to 13 fire damage to attacks, and then a very, very poor tier 12, 11 energy shield roll. But it also has the implicit 15 to fire and cold. This ring, if the affixes had been a little different, if it had life or it had weapon elemental damage or something like that instead of the increased fire damage or the added fire damage to attacks, it could have been decent, but for now it's simply not worth much. There won't be people who's explicitly looking for this. There will be people who look for the extra strength, but that's about it. So we're gonna put that in the chaos orb recipe here and then go back. Now let's see the next one. We're gonna have it. Let's take a diamond ring here. This diamond ring has the top implicit roll, which is 30% increased global critical strike chance, whereas the lowest is 20%. I would never recommend you pick up any if they don't have more than 25%. It then adds 2 to 27 lightning damage to attacks. It gives some accuracy rating. It gives you mana regeneration. It has a decent fire resistance roll, and then it has increased light radius, which is completely useful in most cases. Now, this ring here does have some utility. The problem is that it's a bit all over the place. The increased accuracy rating together with the lightning damage could be decent if you're running like an elemental based attack build. The problem is that the lightning damage to attacks is a poor roll, and that together with the increased mana regeneration rate and the light radius just makes up for an item that doesn't really go anywhere or would satisfy a character's needs, if we can put it like that. So we're gonna put that in the chaos jewelry piece. Actually guys, I'm inclined to move this up to the 8 to 10 just because this could be worth a lot in the beginning of a league. Again, it depends on the seller and it depends on the buyer. The next thing is a 2-stone ring, and we have a nice strength roll here, we have a nice fire resistance roll here. There will be people who would be interested in this simply because it also has 2 prefixes open, so that means that you can craft life on this as well. And it will provide you with a nice bunch of resistances. So I'd say this ring could go for 1 to 3 chaos. You may want in this situation to craft the life onto it to make it visible when people search for it on PoE trades. Alright, so the next thing is another unset ring, and this unset ring, well, it provides resistances, it provides life, and it provides, you know, decent physical damage rolls, but also a pretty bad elemental damage roll to attacks. This ring could have been good. It could have been good if it had more elemental damage added to it, if it had some attack speed on it, but unfortunately it really more provides with some defensive utilities where you in many other cases as an attack based build would go for something else. So there will be people who would buy this just to get the resistances and some life, but it would be very temporarily, and I wouldn't put this for more than 1 chaos, and I'm not even sure if I would do that. So I'm going to put it in the chaos jewelry recipe. The next item is a 2-stone ring. It has strength, very bad life roll. It has 7 life gain on kill, not very useful, and 1 mana gain on kill, not very useful either. There are situations where it can be useful, but not really here. The implicit is decent, but in general this ring doesn't have too much going for it. The rolls are simply too bad. The affixes were okay. The next 2-stone ring has some accuracy, a very poor evasion rating roll, a pretty poor mana roll, 57% increased mana regeneration roll. That's a very nice mana regen tier roll, and it has 12 to maximum energy shield, not very useful, and then 10 life gain on kill. Again, this ring is not really that valuable. We would want it to have weapon elemental damage, or we would have wanted to have some attack speed, some cast speed. We would in general just want to see some kind of good synergy between the affixes that are available here. Maybe even some added lightning damage, fire or cold damage, things like that, together with the mana regeneration, but this ring doesn't really have that. You would not be able to sell this. So we're gonna put that in the chaos recipe tab. Now the next is a coral ring, and as I said, the coral rings can be okay. It's a decent crafting base, but it's not really the best one. The 2 stones is in my opinion the best, or the diamonds. Those are the types that people are mostly interested in buying. So this one adds a decent physical damage roll. I believe this is tier 2, and it adds increased elemental damage with weapons, which is actually not too bad. This is a tier 1 roll as far as I'm remembering, and it adds both strength and dexterity. This ring is actually decent because you can craft either life on it or another resistance, or you could exalt it and then craft mastercraft the last resistance or whatever you would want to, Or you could exalt 2 times and hope for better. The thing is, you'll probably not do that because the strength and dexterity rolls the rolls are too low to do that. But the physical and increased elemental damage is actually pretty sweet, and you could there's definitely attack-based builds that would use this ring. So because it has the potential to be crafted upon, again, you wouldn't use the exalts, please. This was just to give you guys an example of what you could do. I would probably put this into the category where I would say 47 Chaos Orbs. Again, it depends very much if there's a market for it, if there is an attack-based build that would benefit from this. Alright, so, well, I should probably say one thing that would be really good on this would be attack speed, for instance. If this one had attack speed, this ring would be pretty fucking badass. Alright, next, and for the last ring, we have another diamond ring here, and as you can see, it has 26 increased global critical strike chains. It has tier 1, I believe, physical damage roll. It has a low accuracy roll. This is pretty much useless. It only takes up spots for other affixes. It has a low maximum life roll. This means it can't be crafted then. It has a good mana roll, and it has a good increased mana regeneration roll, and a pretty poor cold resistance roll. So this ring, you'll probably see someone leveling a cast on crit character and maybe wanting to use this very temporarily, but I really wouldn't try to sell. This is not worth it, and instead I would just put it in the Chaos Orb recipe. Alright, so let's head over to the belts, and belts are fairly simple. The only thing you're really looking for on belts is usually high life rolls, energy shield rolls if you are energy shield based, high strength rolls, attribute rolls, and then of course resistance rolls. And in some cases you're also looking for something like increased elemental damage with weapons if you are an elemental based belt. So the first belt we're looking at here has an implicit of 35 life together with 48 to maximum life. The 35 is a mid implicit roll, whereas the lowest goes from 30 to and with 40 being the highest. The 48 maximum life roll is fairly low and not really worth anything. The strength roll is fairly low, not really worth anything. The increased flask effect duration is actually pretty decent. It's a tier 1 as far as I believe, and it's actually not to be underestimated. However, that's not really why you want the belt. It's a nice extra bonus thing, but in this case this belt is pretty useless, and we're gonna put that in the Chaos Jewelry section. The next one here has armor. Oh, and yes, I should mention that armor is actually a nice affix to roll on belts as well. It then has a very poor life roll, and it has a poor energy shield roll, but it has a decent lightning resistance roll. Again, the affixes are just not, or the rolls of the affixes are simply not good enough here, so we're gonna put that up here as well. The next one has the lowest of the implicit rolls, but it has a very nice increased elemental damage with weapons roll, 30%. It then has a fairly poor strength roll, it has a poor armor roll, it has a decent lightning resistance roll to poor, and it has the flask life recovery rate. This belt, if it had more life, it could potentially be used as a leveling belt, and you could sell it for 1 to 2 chaos, but in this case, not really worth it. The next one here has a nice implicit 39 roll, a decent medium life roll, but then a decent fire resistance roll and a very nice cold resistance roll together with the increased flask charges gained. This belt is actually pretty good for a temporary belt, at least for early level mapping and things like that. This would be acceptable, and it has a prefix open, so you could actually craft armor on this belt as well. And so that means that this belt will be going into the category of, let's say, 47 Chaos Orbs. The reason it's not more is because the rolls would need to be higher, and it would have been nice if there was a suffix more available for those extra resistances. But 4 to 7, maybe if you were to haggle a bit, you could get it up to 8 to 10. So the next we have has the top maximum life roll implicit. It has a decent armor roll, it's not to be underestimated. The life roll is absolutely terrible. The 2.8 life regeneration is poor. As I said earlier, we don't want life regeneration on our gear. It's not worth it. We want to scale that through other means. And then it has a decent cold resistance roll together with increased stun recovery. And basically, it could have been better if the rolls were better, if the life roll had been better, if it didn't have the life regenerated per second, so it had room for other affixes. But in this case, no, not really. I mean, you could potentially sell it for 1 chaos, but we're not going to bother, we're going to put it in here. The next one has 38 implicit. It has some chaos resistance, low chaos resistance roll. It has increased stun recovery, not really worth it. It has increased flask life recovery rate, but that together with the 10 maximum energy shield that it provides, not worth it. A poor belt. Again, remember, every time we put it in here, it at least keeps half of the value, because we will be able to turn this into a chaos orb together with the other chaos orb items. So up next we have the belt with 32 implicit. It has 18 strength. It has a good life roll of 84. It's not the highest. It's definitely not the highest. I believe this is tier 3 or tier 4. So it can get much better. But it's still a nice life roll that will be able to make a big difference on your character at the right time. And then it has a very nice energy shield roll, or a decent energy shield roll. This is tier 2, I believe. And for a hybrid character, this could be useful. The strength would help as well. The reduced enemy stun threshold, not really that valuable, and the increased stun recovery, not really that valuable. But this belt could be used temporarily while leveling up. I would put this in the 1 to 3 chaos section, whereas you would be able to haggle it probably up to 2 to 3, in my opinion. Again, keep in mind, guys, at the end of a league, things like this will not really have that much value, but in the beginning of a league, where you are building your character, there's not really that much else competing. These things can be very valuable, as they allow you to take you further into mapping, so you can compete and be, you know, ahead of the competition. So the next belt, 36 implicit, 43 maximum energy shield, a decent energy shield roll, 8 to lightning resistance, that's very poor, and then increased stun duration and increased flask effect duration. We don't like that. You guys will know that by now why we don't like that. 40 to maximum life, perfect implicit roll. 7 to armor. Yeah, I don't even need to explain why that's bad. 11 to maximum life, yeah. 31 to lightning resistance and increased stun duration on enemies. Well, if let's say this belt actually, or well, this belt does actually have some really good affixes, but the rolls are just so poor. If this belt had better rolls, this could have been a good roll, because armor is good, life is valuable, and lightning resistance is good. And I believe it actually has a suffix open, so we could craft even another resistance onto it. And you could craft another prefix if you wanted to. The next belt we have here has 39 implicit, reduced enemy stun threshold, we don't care about that. The 20 armor is too low, the 28 to maximum life is too low, 29 to fire resistance is acceptable, but not really when it's by itself. If this belt had, you know, another suffix roll with resistances, it could have been, well, no, it's crap. Let's not waste time on that. So the last items we have here are our amulets. And I actually believe I have one here that's unidentified. Yes. So the first one we take a look at is the Skull clasp here. It has dexterity and intelligence. Remember, attributes are useful, and that's why we choose these hybrid amulets, because it helps people level up their gems and sate their attribute needs for certain gear. It has 15 to 28 fire damage to attacks, which is decent, but not really something you would go for. It has increased global critical strike multiplier, which is it's a low roll, but it's a nice affix to have. It has 18% increased armor, which is actually pretty decent. I believe this is tier 2, and it has increased evasion rating. The thing is here that it kind of needs either life or a high energy shield roll for this to have some kind of value, and you would really want to see the global crit to be higher and the added fire damage to attacks be higher. This could be useful for an attack-based hybrid or CI build, but yeah, it doesn't even have any resistances, so I really wouldn't put too much hope into this. I'm sure there are builds that could benefit from it, but there's definitely better alternatives out there. So I would put it in the Chaos Jewelry section. Next one we have here is a Gate Amulet, and so it has Strength and Intelligence. It adds lightning damage, it has an accuracy roll, a decent accuracy roll, not too impressive. The lightning damage roll is pretty poor as well. The 15% increased evasion is okay. The life roll is decent, and the fire resistance roll is decent. Now this amulet here can definitely be used while leveling temporarily. There will be attack-based builds that will benefit from this because of the accuracy. Let's say you have a static strike character, you would increase the lightning damage for that, you would hit more oftenly with the accuracy rating, unless you're of course already Resolute Technique. The increased evasion rating would be okay. In that case you would probably be Iron Reflexes as well, so you would scale it through that. The life would of course be beneficial, it could be higher and should be higher. And the fire resistance roll is okay. There's only room for another prefix, so you can't craft additional resistances on this. In the beginning of a league, I would try to sell this. Later on, I wouldn't. So let's say we're in the beginning of a league, I would put it in the 1-3 Chaos Orb. The next one is another turquoise amulet. I'm so mispronouncing that. I can't wrap my tongue around that. Anyway, it has increased mana regeneration, it has 8% increased maximum energy shield, it has decent cold resistance roll, and it has a very poor, mana gain on kill roll. The increased maximum energy shield roll, percentage-wise, is a great affix, but the roll is not that valuable, and the mana regeneration by itself, it's a decent roll, but it could be much better, and this ring just doesn't have that, or this amulet just doesn't have any synergy or something that it would do better than you would search for another amulet, so not really worth it. The next one is an Agate Amulet, and it has 6 to 14 to cold to attacks, it has lightning to attacks, increased cast speed, maximum energy shield, and cold resistance, a nice cold resistance roll. The problem is here that this amulet gives you cast speed. If this had been attack speed, then maybe you could have used this as a temporary elemental based amulet. The problem is it doesn't have life. You could have used it as a hybrid or CI, but let's be real, not too many use that, so no, not really worth anything. The next one here is another Agate Amulet, so again, Strength and Intelligence implicit, and then plus 32 to Dexterity, which is a decent roll. It then has a low life roll of 30 plus, it has a low +1 or +23 to maximum energy shield, and then 1% of physical attack damage leached as life. Since leech are pretty poor right now, the leech roll is really not that valuable. Leech rolls used to be pretty good because they could cover your mana needs or your life regen needs by just having one item. At the moment, this is not really the case. The energy shield roll is not that impressive, the life roll is not impressive, but the strength and intelligence plus the dexterity makes up for a versatile amulet that covers a lot of attributes. If the life roll had been better, this could have been a decent amulet, because you can also craft resistances onto it. So it would have been okay as a temporary thing where you would level up. Because of that, I would put this amulet in the 1-3 Chaos Orb. Again, we're talking about items in the beginning of a league. It wouldn't be worth anything later on in the league when the market is saturated and there's, the good items. Next one here is the Power Amulet, and the reason I actually have this is because I wanted to talk about or mention that increased mana regeneration on amulets used to be fairly good when Eldritch Battery and Arctic Armor were different. But since they aren't anymore, the increased mana regeneration is not that valuable anymore, but it's not the worst type of amulet you can get either. But in this case it has 1-5 lightning attacks or damage to attacks, it has low accuracy roll, it has decent maximum energy shield roll, it has a very nice 16 to all elemental resistances. Then again, that's the only thing this amulet really has going for it that's useful, so unfortunately not worth it. If this one had life on it and a better lightning damage to attacks roll, well, then it could have actually have been a decent one, but it doesn't. So let's stop making excuses for it. Next one is the Onyx Amulet. And Onyx Amulets, I believe they were nerfed. They aren't as useful as they were once. They used to provide more attributes. And this one here, in general, I would recommend going for the hybrid ones, such as the turquoise or the agates, because they provide you more with 2 attributes instead of trying to reach all attributes, such as the Onyx does here, so both strength, intelligence, and dexterity. The reason for this is that you usually don't need all 3 attributes to be boosted, you only need 1 or 2, and so the other one does that better. But this one, this Onyx here has 15 to all attributes, then it has 15 or 35 to strength, so it actually adds 50 to strength, so that's nice, but it doesn't have a good elemental damage with weapons roll. It has a decent cold resistant roll, and it also has the life gain on kill, which is pretty useless. So if this one had a good life roll and the increased elemental damage with weapons had been better, it could have been good. But yeah, it doesn't. So because of that, we're gonna put it in here. The next one here is an Onyx again, so to all attributes. 12 to strength, low roll, global critical strike chains, together with increased global critical strike multiplier. The rolls aren't that good. They could definitely have been of a better tier, but it also has increased to armor. The thing is, this amulet really wants to be good, but it lacks the main component, and that is life in this situation and better rolls of the affixes. So if this one had better rolls of the affixes and it had life, you can't craft life on this, by the way. This one would have been pretty badass for an attack based build, definitely. It could even be used for an armor based caster, but we don't see too many of those. So what do I want to do with this? No, it's simply not worth it. Simply not worth it in my opinion. The last one here is another Gate Amulet. It has 23 to all attributes, which is, it's not the highest roll, but it's actually quite a lot together with the 23 to strength and intelligence it has implicit. And it has increased lightning damage, increased evasion rating, and 9 to cold resistance. The cold resistance sucks, the increased evasion roll is decent, the lightning damage roll sucks, and we talked about the attributes. This one, unfortunately, doesn't have too much going for it either. So we're gonna scrap this one as well. And that's the items we rolled this time, guys. Keep in mind, this is not standard or normal hardcore prices. This is challenge leagues prices. Also, I'm not trying to give you precise prices. I'm just trying to give you an indication of what these things are worth. If you were to look them up on PoE Trade and compare them to alternatives, stat-wise or stat for stat, then I'm sure you would come up with a more precise price. And yeah, I plan on making more of these if you guys enjoy these types of videos. I'll mostly be using jewelry because that's how I mostly make my currency in the leagues. Jewelry is definitely the items that are the easiest to sell and the items that are replaced most by players, so that's why you can easily sell this stuff. Anyway, I hope it was of use. Thank you for watching, and bros, do you even nerd?